and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. Today's topic is Defense in Depth, building a robust ransomware prevention and recovery strategy. My name is Jess Steinbach with Actual Tech Media, and I am thrilled to be your moderator for this important conversation and deep dive into defense planning. And what I like about the conversation today is that we are focusing on both prevention and recovery. So we build up our walls as thick and as tall as we possibly can. We dig out those moats, we arm our people, but we don't stop there. As much as we hate to think about it, we also plan ahead for the day that a threat actor might actually get through all of those best laid plans and breach those castle walls. So both together, prevention and recovery. And that's what makes a truly robust ransomware strategy, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And we are not on our own in all this fun. We will be joined by top industry experts from 1111 Systems, Rubrik, and Graphis, who are going to share some innovative solutions, best practices, tips, and ideas to help you reinforce or redesign your organization's ransomware security program. It is going to be a fascinating day. I don't want to take a single minute away from our speakers, so we're going to zip through some housekeeping information and get this show on the road here. All right, so let's take a quick little guided tour of your audience console. The first thing I want to point out is that questions window. Now, if you haven't already said hi, reach out, give a wave to the other members in the Actual Tech Media community. We love seeing all you awesome folks connecting from around the world. Now, throughout the webinar today, the Questions tab is also the best place to reach out to the Actual Tech Media crew if you are having any tech issues and you need a little bit of a hand. Now, keep in mind that a browser refresh is going to clear out any of the usual tech gremlins, but if that doesn't work, just shoot us a message and we will be there to help. Most importantly, though, we want this to be an informative webinar for you, which means that we want to see all of those technical questions. So throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you will get engaged, get involved in the discussion, post those comments, the questions, the tips, the discussion points, whatever's on your mind, we want to see that. Not only will we have team members responding to you during the live webinar over live chat, we will also make sure that all of the questions asked do get sent to 1111 Systems, Rubrik, and Graphis, and they will definitely get you an answer back. So even if we don't get to you in a live discussion after one of our presentations today, you will get an answer to your question. All right, the last two things that I want to point out on your webinar console, the first one is the Twitter button. You're going to hear all kinds of cool little brain lady-uppy things today, and if you want to share those with your friends, you can use that Twitter button right there on your screen, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will automatically be added to your post. And the very last thing on your audience console is that Handouts tab. It's right there next to the questions window that we were chatting about a little earlier. You're going to find some fantastic resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. It's just really hard to remember all the cool stuff that we're going to learn. So do yourself a favor. Your future self will thank you for this. Click on those handouts, download them, save them for later, and you can check them out after we wrap. All right, now for those of you that I haven't met yet, as I said at the top, my name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I'm very happy to be your moderator for this discussion. Now, my wonderful fellow moderators, Scott Becker and David Davis, will be joining us a little bit later on, so you get the whole wonderful moderator crew today. Lucky you guys. All right, and speaking of lucky, we also have 3 $500 Amazon gift cards that we will be giving away throughout the EcoCast today. Now, as a reminder, you must be in attendance live at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win. We also have the full Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions, which all winners must meet. If you're not sure what those are, they're right there for you in the Handouts tab. So we were chatting about that earlier. Click into the Handouts tab, scroll down to the bottom. You will find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. All right, now I was saying a bit earlier on how much we love seeing all your questions coming in, and we love it so much that we've actually added a little bit of an extra incentive for you. So today we will be collecting all the best questions asked in each one of our sessions, and we will identify that very, very, very best question, and we will send them a $50 Amazon gift card. And again, that's for each one of the sessions. So get those questions in because, hey, it brings up the whole awesome engagement and fun of the entire webinar, but also there's a chance that you could win that $50 gift card. So that's win-win there. No pun intended. We also do have a couple of T's and C's up on the screen for you here, just some reminders, including the fact that all prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. Now, if you are a lucky winner here today, you do always have the option to donate the value of your prize to one of our selected charities. And you can see them up on the screen now. This is actually an updated list from our usual organizations that we work with, because we've selected some organizations that are helping with earthquake relief. So this is a great way to support our global community. So please do let us know if you're a winner and this is something that you are interested in, because we would obviously love to help make that happen. Now, we're pretty excited to be connecting here with you live at the EcoCast today, and we definitely want to keep those good vibes going. So stay in touch. Get connected with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Now, I'm also going to suggest that if you haven't done this, head on over to our YouTube page and make sure that you are subscribed to the Actual Tech Media YouTube channel. There are some incredible on-demand videos there for you. The content is unreal, and just about any topic that you could imagine, there's something there for you. So do go check that out on YouTube. Okay, now another great way to win a prize and to expand our killer community here at Actual Tech Media is to refer an industry friend or coworker. You're going to find a link to do that right there in your handouts tab. You'll also get automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. Now, I do want to promise you that we are not going to spam your friends, your coworkers. We send them an invite to a list of upcoming webinars, and if they don't respond, they get one more reminder, and that's it. Then we just let them go off into the world, sail off into the sunset. But that's a nice, easy communication. So don't feel any stress about referring anyone. Then both you and your coworker could win a $300 Amazon gift card. Now, we hold those drawings every month, so lots of chances to win. All right, the last thing I want to tell you about before we get into our keynote here is the Actual Tech Media Decisions Group. Now, this is a brand new program. So you may have heard me talk about it if you've been on a MegaCast or EcoCast in the last week or so. But this is the Actual Tech Media Decision Group. Super cool idea. Basically, you get to sign up and join a community of technology decision makers. Now, there's a few things that are going to happen when you sign up. One, the Actual Tech Media Group will pair you with some vendors and people that have emerging solutions that we think you should know about based on the needs you'll identify in your application. Two, you will basically get access to a community board where various vendors are going to post all kinds of fun things, like maybe they need someone to test run a new service or a new technology, they need someone to take some surveys, and so on. And then there's going to be opportunities with that to get some extra, thank you prizes. But the best part of all of that is connecting with other movers and shakers and learning about new technology, right at the forefront, being in the know of it all. So if you are a decision maker at your organization, you're interested in that, there's a link for you right in the handouts tab, and you can get your application in. And the application is really just so we get to know you a little bit and know what you're looking for. So go click there, check that out. All right, well, that was all the housekeeping things. And I don't know about you all, but I am ready to start our session today. And to get things rolling with us, we have not one but two of our favorite experts and moderators and all around fascinating humans, and that is Scott Becker and Keith Ward. Now, Keith is not only a moderator here at Actual Tech Media, he is also our editorial director and manages a lot of our ransomware content. So we asked him to come on and chat with Scott today about what's trending in the world of ransomware. So we'll get them out here in just a moment. Keith, Scott, thank you both so much for joining us on the EcoCast today. Scott, I'm going to hand things right on over to you. Take it away.
Thanks a lot. And I'm happy to be here with you, Keith, to talk about ransomware. And Keith, it's just, I always love to talk to you about these topics because, as the editor of ransomware.org, you're looking into ransomware stuff on a daily basis. So thanks for being here to talk about that today.
Oh, pleasure to be here, Scott. Always enjoy talking with you about one of my favorite topics, although most companies would rather avoid talking about it. It's something we do need to discuss, isn't it?
It is. And, it seems like there's always, whenever we get on to talk about ransomware, there's always a relevant example that's like ripped out of the headlines. And of course, we have one of those today, which is, just this month, we've had a third major metro, be hit by ransomware. So, in the last few years, Atlanta and Baltimore were sort of the high profile, municipal cases. Now, just this month, we've had Oakland out in California that was hit. So they said that they were hit on February 10th. They reported that they'd had an overnight, the attack phase of the incident had started on February 8th. And their initial statements were that they had taken down the network to sort of contain the attack, and then later it emerged that the network outage was not in their control. It was just stuff was down all over the place. So there were in the public statements it was that you know 911 fire kind of rescue stuff, and city financial services were up, but a lot of the stuff that they termed as sort of non-essential was down. Buildings were closed. Public libraries, you couldn't get in and use the public computers or do scanning and printing and that kind of stuff. And wireless was down all over the city. They were working with remediation firms. They were working with forensic teams. They were working with local and federal, agencies to investigate. And then, on the 15th, they were able to start to get some stuff back. Although they reported that, payment collection was down, report processing, there was some sort of big business license deadline that they had to issue a major extension for. And then on February 20th, so just a few days ago, they did restore access to a lot of the public computers, but there are still elements that are down. This is a major incident. What do you think about where we are with ransomware with that?
It's really scary stuff. How deep into systems this stuff goes, and how broad and wide-ranging the effect is. It's not on an attack on a single server that takes down your email. Now, that's bad enough for an organization, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that can be terrifying, and that can result in the loss of a lot of business. But when you're talking about citywide services, I mean, this time you said it didn't hit 911. Well, next time, what if it does?
Yeah.
And we know there's going to be a next time because this keeps happening. So the fact that cities, which should have the most money to spend on these things and should be the most careful, are still getting hit like this. It makes you wonder how secure we really are, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so let's go from West Coast to East Coast. I know there've been some infrastructure issues on your mind lately.
Well, you mentioned Baltimore, which was hit a number of years ago. Now, I live near Baltimore and have for a long time. So this was something sort of, in my backyard, if you will, when lots of stuff was shut down. A lot of city financial stuff was shut down for a time with some attacks. So Baltimore is used to this. Now we find out that Baltimore was very nearly hit again in a really serious way earlier this month as well. There was a neo-Nazi group called Atomwaff, and I'm guessing is how it's pronounced. And two members of this group were planning on attacking 5 Baltimore area power substations. According to a report, after a snowstorm when most people are using max electricity, is what one of these organizers said. They were going to try to blow up these substations and essentially lay Baltimore to waste. They were trying to destroy the city for race-related reasons, but ultimately the same kind of idea, in that they just wanted to attack infrastructure.
Yeah.
They wanted to attack a city to have the greatest impact, right? Either the greatest financial reward in the case of ransomware, the greatest profile for the attack. They get their message out, whatever it is. There's always a plan, and these, fortunately, they were stopped. These two people were captured, and they're in the court system now. So their white supremacist plot was foiled. But again, infrastructure. I mean, they were going after power substations. Well, those substations, Scott, are everywhere in this country. There are many thousands of substations. Some are more secure than others. And there's no sort of national standards, right? Because they're all in different states. So there's no national standards, at least that I'm aware of, for how we protect those from cyber attacks and from physical attacks. And in fact, they're typically coordinated too. You see both types of attacks. And should be, I think, more terrifying to people than it is. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that attack was really interesting, and while it's not ransomware per se, even it does highlight the way infrastructure is such um, a tempting target, and it's also like it's almost part of your disaster recovery planning, to think about that kind of stuff as well. Like if you're in a metro where that kind of thing can happen, um, you'd really be in a lot of trouble in terms of disaster recovery planning.
It's going so much further than, again, to me, this is what I come back to often, the spread of it, which is simply like nothing we've seen before because of the interconnected nature of networks. We're coming up. What is this? This is February right now. We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the most famous infrastructure ransomware attack of all time. And raise your hand if you've heard the name Colonial Pipeline, right? So Colonial Pipeline was May 2021. This is a 5,500 mile long pipeline servicing all of the East Coast. So it was oil, it was aviation fuel, so airplanes, etc. It was home heating oil. So the Colonial Pipeline is an absolutely central artery for powering the East Coast of the United States, where you and I both happen to live. They attacked. They were demanded a $4.4 million ransom, which Colonial Pipeline paid. As a matter of fact, they got hit anyway. And everything was disrupted for days. And a big part of the disruption, and in fact, Alan Liska, one of the foremost writers and analysts in this space, who we both know, who's been a guest with you and with me, has said correctly that one of the big factors in making this such a successful attack was the panic that ensued from it. It wasn't even so much the direct effects of the attack, which were significant, but people heard there was an attack on infrastructure. They panicked. The gas station lines got really long because this is what people do when you find out that a critical resource is no longer in great supply that it was. So we're talking about not only the physical effects of the attack, but the mental impact it has on a population that something like ransomware can have, which only brings home again, Scott, the critical importance of having all your ducks in a row, to use an old timer's phrase. Since I'm an old timer, I get to use that phrase.
Well, let me jump in there. That's a great place to leave it, because we've got some experts coming on who are going to tell us how to get those ducks in a row for ransomware. So, Keith, thanks for joining me here for this little talk, and looking forward to the rest of the session.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Scott.
All right. Well, Keith, now I feel attacked because I talk about ducks in a row all the time. So I think that's a universal, multi-generational phrase, really. Well, thanks, guys. That was a really interesting talk. And I know we're going to have you back on a little bit later, which is really exciting to talk even a little bit more about some of the history of ransomware. But a great place to start out the day. I have a quick poll up on the screen for all of you that I would love to get your feedback on. What we're looking for is, what is the time frame that you have in mind for adding new or updating existing IT solutions? Obviously, today we're talking about this ransomware preparedness strategies. So if if you can take a minute now and fill out that poll, again, this just helps, especially for our speakers, to get an idea of whether or not you're kind of thinking urgency, you need to make a change very quickly, or maybe you're sort of planning ahead. Maybe you're thinking about your 2024 ransomware preparedness strategy and kind of where you're at in that research journey. So I'm seeing a pretty good spread, but I have to say the vast majority of you seem to be either in about 6 to 12 months or in the not sure category. And not sure is a great place to start out the day today, because we have some awesome experts with us who are going to be able to maybe shed a little bit of light, give you some clarity around that. Well, speaking of which, I think it's time that we jump into our first session of the day. And to kick off this exciting discussion, we will be chatting with an expert from the awesome folks at 1111 Systems. I am so excited to introduce you all to Jim Jones, Senior Product Infrastructure Architect at 1111 Systems. Jim, thank you so much for being here to kick off the EcoCast today. I know you have a ton of information to cover for us, so I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you. Take it away, Jim.
Thanks, Jess, and thanks for having me. Yes, so we are going to talk about one of those important ducks to have in a row. We're going to talk about handling your disaster recovery strategy correctly. Now that we have to think about ransomware, it's probably our biggest driver for why we have it in the first place. So real briefly, like I said, I'm a product infrastructure architect here at 1111 Systems. Do a lot of things with disaster recovery in general and Veeam specifically. But let's jump right in, because as you mentioned, I do have a little bit to cover. So, Colonial Pipeline absolutely is that thing that we point at in the recent history that is, the big splashy one. But if you've been paying attention, the past few years has been just a never-ending series of big and splashy. Whether it's a hospital system, whether it's entire cities being attacked, or, other pipeline firms. In 2022, we see from reports from Veeam and from other industry organizations that, cyber attacks in general were up over 40%. And of those, ransomware was number one. And, this has been a thing, and this has been an issue. And the reason for this being is because it's become big business. It's not only against big business, but it's big business that's driving it in a lot of situations. Those attacks are costing on average over $4.5 million when they happen. So why does it cost this much? Well, we think about the main things like mitigation. We look at what the security threat was that got us attacked in the first place, and then the restoration of those services. But also understand that playing into that cost is the loss of business that your organization may incur, or the cost of, say, doing everything on paper for weeks while you try to get systems up. And then also reputation. Reputation is a real thing, especially for those of us in the tech sector, that we have to take into consideration. But unfortunately, too often these attacks become the ultimate DR test. The organizations still think of disaster recovery and their backup systems the same way that they did in 2005 or 2006, where these are backups, we send them off somewhere, and hopefully they're going to work when they work. The reality of it is when a ransomware attack hits, okay, they're going to get, on average, 40% or greater, depending on the study that you look at, 40% or greater of that data encrypted or destroyed, okay? That's a significant portion of your infrastructure, and we need to take that into consideration. And because you're not going to, they're looking for a ransom, and we hear everybody else tell you, and I will tell you the same thing, don't ever pay the ransom. If you pay it, there's no guarantees it's going to happen, or that the decryptor itself is going to work. As someone who's seen these attacks firsthand, oftentimes, even if you can decrypt that data, then there's data loss after the fact. So it's worth taking a second. Let's talk about what ransomware is in 2023 and where we're getting to. Because it's not just, the red lock screen that has a Bitcoin address that we need to send money to so that we can potentially decrypt that data. So from a overall for your organization protecting against ransomware, the entry is still the same that it's been, but kind of like ramped up. But we're going to fish for credentials. We're definitely going to go out, and we want the goal is to own as much of that authentication as they can. And this happens mostly through phishing, whether it be email, social media, websites, vulnerabilities, take your pick. All of these are the same. So that's still pretty much the same. We still have that going on. Where things are getting Wild West is we're now getting layered extortion in these ransomware attacks. Oftentimes when we talk about more corporate organization-based ransomware attacks, we're seeing a rise of the double and triple extortion. What does that mean? So not only are we going to extort you trying to get, or they going to extort you trying to get money to get you to decrypt the data, but they're also going to say, if you don't pay this, then we're going to leak your data out to the public internet. And that's nothing that we want to look for. And further, the triple extortion is even worse, which is not only going to leak our information, we're going to leak our customers' data. And that's something, again, we get back to the reputation and things we need to take care of and be mindful of. Well, how are they going to get that data? How are they going to leak it? Unfortunately, one of the things that these very, very efficient, very organized hacker organizations are doing these days is they've realized that backup data is a thing that can be targeted as a nice portable way to get data out exfiltrated from the organization. So we need to protect those backups. So let's take a minute and let's think about that for a second. So we're going to take a stroll down memory lane for just a second, and we're going to talk about 321. I'm sure everybody here has heard this before, but just for a second, in case you haven't heard it, 321 means 3 copies of your data. That includes production, and then we're going to have 2 different copies that are on different media types. So think of tape, cloud, object storage, spinning disk, etc. And then one of those copies needs to be off-site and encrypted. Okay. Now, preferably, we're going to encrypt everything, but at a bare minimum, that's it. But that in and of itself doesn't really get the job done in 2023. We also need to add on what Veeam is deeming 32110, which I will refer to it as 321 enhanced until the end of time. But that second one, we need an air gap copy or a mutable copy. Both of those mean we have a version of this backup that is protected from network, so it can be encrypted and cannot be deleted no matter what, so it can be immutable. And then finally, the 0 is for errors in our backups. So somebody's actually got to be watching those backups. Make sure that we aren't, having a job that's been erroring for the last month and nobody knows it. And then also test it, because an untested backup is nothing but unverified data. Okay, so how can we make this a thing? So first off, we need to design with security in mind when it comes to disaster recovery. We need to be intentional with designing our DR policy. It's not going to be just that server we slap up and, frankly, give to the intern as a thing of responsibility. This needs to be a critical core system in today's world and be mindful. And as we're designing security, let's layer that protection. So it's not just backups today. Let's think of it as, we have these backups are here for compliance, and these backups are here for off-site recoverability. And more importantly, these critical systems are possibly replicated to another environment so that they can be up in a matter of minutes as opposed to a matter of hours or days. Okay. We also need to make sure that we overlay everything that we're doing with encryption. Okay. Encryption is important in all this. It needs to be encrypted in flight and at rest. And be mindful of not just the backup, but also the restore. Okay. And this is a thing that a lot of DR admins will miss. As we talk about the, disaster recovery in the age of cloud native, let's make sure that those offsite copies of our backups are somewhere close to a compute source so that we can make sure that when it comes time to actually have to restore those systems in anger, that there is something close and adjacent to it in a low latency way and well connected that we can get those to. And then finally, from a protection and designing from security standpoint, in every situation, especially as we talk about Veeam in particular, which is where, this is being led, there's no reason why we can't either have immutability, air gap, or insider protection against every single copy of our backup data. Okay, so let's design with that in mind. So that's actually designing how we're going to handle our backups. But we also, as we said, we're going to design for security. Okay, so the systems that Veeam runs on, as we know, for those of us that use Veeam, are still Windows systems today. Okay, and they use SQL Server as the configuration underneath of it. And while this is often pointed out as one of the things that needs to be taken care of, it is one of the most easily mitigated issues, security issues for Veeam infrastructure. Okay, so we can start and do a good posture for security by getting rid of the Windows authentication with Veeam. Lots of times, especially in the small business realm, we see the all-in-one Veeam deployment. Somebody takes an old big physical server, installs Windows on it, downloads the Veeam ISO, and just click next all the way through the installation. That's a good idea, and it was good for before, but as we think about it from a robust ransomware protected environment, it's not great. So by removing that domain admin link maybe from the local administrator link between the application and the database, we can take away and easily take away one of the biggest hurdles we have to get through. So that's good. So maybe we can talk about better. Better is, as we think about a larger organization and a more robust disaster recovery and backup solution, we can do an entire separate Active Directory domain purposely for DR purposes. Okay, it doesn't take a whole lot of extra infrastructure to make this happen. But if we do this and we put our systems that are related to our Veeam infrastructure into that separate Active Directory domain, we can then protect just that domain with MFA. And we absolutely should. Use things like Cisco Duo to protect the actual authentication onto the Windows servers. Veeam in V12 now actually supports multi-factor authentication into their console. So those remote admins that you've got that are then using the console to get into there, you can put MFA on that. We should also consider limiting access to PowerShell. Too often, some of these playbooks that we see for ransomware, they use PowerShell as the methodology to discover the network and discover and actually perform attacks that include potentially trying to delete backups and things like that. If we limit PowerShell to just those systems that are truly related to your DR systems, you're really going to go a long way. And then finally, we can talk about maybe the best. How can we really lock down the security for our disaster recovery system? Is let's put in a system where we're not only using that separate Active Directory domain, but we're using hardened Linux repositories or purpose-built object storage appliances that are set up to be immutable with no credentials stored anywhere to actually function as the repositories for your backups. So they're stored there in an encrypted state, so they're always stored encrypted. Nothing knows the credentials on how to get there. And even if they could, the backups are stored as in an immutable way so that they can't get deleted. And then finally, because we need to know what's going on and see how all this happens, we need to design all of this with robust monitoring and security management. So things like SIEM or remote logging and event management, and then have that feed into a source system or something that does automated orchestration or automated security response. So that, if you start to see those attacks happening throughout your organization, that those backup systems are the very first things that have defenses and the firewalls start coming up, if you will. But, backup is really only half of the equation as we talk about this, okay? As we talk about backup, the second half has to be a conversation around recoverability, okay? Too often we think of our backups as that thing that goes off and it happens, but we rarely know if they actually work, okay? For 20 years, I was a small business sysadmin, and I had to manage all these things across the life cycle. And one of the best things that I learned is that to know that disaster recovery policy is not a stagnant document. Too often, it does happen that these documents get written, then they're thrown into a file cabinet or into a OneDrive folder, and then they're never touched until the end of time. Okay? This should be a thing that you are constantly evolving. As new systems and new applications and new clouds and new locations all come to be, we need to be considering all of those things. Okay, and we need to take those into account. We need to be talking to our stakeholders, our application owners internally, and actually know from them, okay, if this system goes offline, how long can you stand for that to be offline before it becomes more than just a nuisance and starts to impact your business? Okay, and then next, we need to make sure we're testing our backups. We need to make sure that when we have to use these things, when it's not just, a DR test or whatever, that we know what to do and that they are going to work. Because those are two things that are both important. We always think of testing backups to make sure that our backups work, but they also help define how you are going to recover when the time comes. So do things like doing file restoration, virtual machine restoration. Potentially, like I said, if we're layering replication into this conversation, which I absolutely will advocate for, work with your VCSP partner and have replication there, and then know what it looks like if we're going to take some of those, lower tiered applications and restore those backups into that replicated environment, and have all that documented. So when a situation presents itself that you actually have to deal with this, that you know what you're going to do. And then the following, the last thing that I'll leave with you here as we think about this, lots of organizations today are starting to think more and more about hyperscale is where we're going to restore to if we have to. Because everybody touts it. Everybody says this is an option that is available for you. Know for yourself, if you're a traditional organization that's still using VMware on-prem, know for yourself what doing those workloads in hyperscaler looks like. Know what the costs look like. Know if there's any limitations or design gotchas that you need to understand, or security. Know what the time for restoration to those environments looks like for yourself. These are all very critical things that you need to take into account. But, we should know that public cloud is not just hyperscaler. Here at 1111 Systems, we are part of the VMware VCPP ecosystem, meaning that we do public cloud, but still based on VMware infrastructure. This is presented to you via what's commonly referred to as Cloud Director and our award-winning console. And this is the best of breed architecture. We have been doing VCPP before VCPP was actually a thing. And so we've been along for the entire ride and really know what we're doing, and we have fanatical support to be there to be able to help you and make sure that you are using public cloud in a good and well-designed manner. But so far we've been talking mostly about backup. Well, we're really good at backup as well. As we talk about backup, that mostly comes in two flavors. Historically, you probably heard of us in relation to Veeam Cloud Connect backup, and this is a very good and very mature option, and it's the best for recoverability aside from replication, which is the absolute gold standard. All of our backups that you would send to us as an offsite copy are going to land on the Linux repositories, as we talked about earlier. Further, they provide that authentication breakpoint that we've been talking about, that another set of credentials that you don't own and you don't have support, that you can't control, to make sure that there's a break glass there. And because Cloud Connect really kind of comes in two flavors, Cloud Connect backup and Cloud Connect replication, they're the same concept and they interplay together very well. So you can really kind of go across that. And further, it will support encryption of your backups, all the way from the first hit that you have to your on-premises backups, all the way through to the cloud copy. And that encryption key is one that you own. We do not. So you're going to have security there. Here lately, especially with the V12 launch last week, there's a lot of talk about object storage as a backup location. Object storage is also great, but in my mind, it is best for compliance. Think of this as, I need to get it off site. I need long-term retention. I need to be cost controlled. And I need to, and that's where we can tier object storage into this conversation. Your backups will be encrypted. Immutability will be supported as well. And because 1111, frankly, has been so long a Veeam partner, our object storage platform is extremely performant and designed for large-scale backup operations. And we have many, many performance tweaks in our system to truly make it performant for Veeam workloads. But don't just take our word for it. Frankly, the industry has spoken quite a lot about us, whether it's vendors that we partner with, such as Veeam, Zerto, or VMware, or it's industry analysts such as Gartner, CRN, or Forrester. We've repeatedly, year after year, won awards for our services, and those services are pretty much everywhere. We've been doing this for a very long time. We've got 40 years into this through our various organizations. And we have data centers all over the world. So reality is if you have data somewhere that needs protected, we will have disaster recovery or production workload environments nearby. And then finally, if you want to see what this looks like and see how this is for yourself, we do offer trials for all of our services. You can either scan the QR code that you see on the screen, or if you're like me, just know Veeam Cloud Connect free trial and just type it in with dashes to be security mindful, and you can try these services for yourself. And with that, we'll be into the Q&A portion. Jess,
yeah.
Do you hear any questions up there?
We definitely have a lot of questions coming in, Jim. Thank you so much for that presentation. Before we get into the questions, I do just want to point out to everyone out there that we've put a poll up on the screen for you here. And what we want to know is what additional information you would like to get about the 1111 system solution. So again, and if you've been on these before, you've heard me say this, and I promise you it's true. Your future self will thank you. Click on that poll right now, and you're hitting the easy button. 1111 is going to send you the data sheet, the white paper, the customer use case, whatever it is, they're going to send that right to you. So this is just simplifying. So click on the poll there, and you'll get some follow-up from 1111. Now, Jim, we've got tons of questions. I do also want to tell you, you got a couple of high fives from the audience as well. Definitely some fans out there already. Are you ready to dive into some Q&A?
Of course.
Of course. All right. Well, I want to start with this one just as a quick kind of level set on terminology. Prashant was wondering if you could define what VCSP means.
Sure. So VCSP is a term that's short for Veeam Certified Service Provider. So it's an entire ecosystem of service providers that are aligned to Veeam backup services for off-site. Of the VCSPs, we are typically considered one of the leaders.
Perfect. Okay. Good, easy definition there. We have a question here from Khan wondering about, what are the best practices or best ways to sort of think about that? You said test. That was the main takeaway and that iterative process. Do you have any tips on best practices there? And I'm wondering if we can expand that a little bit, Jim, as I throw on a part B to this question, is if there's any best practices in general besides that sort of iterative and not waiting till the last minute in terms of ransomware protection that you'd want to add on to that as well? Yeah,
absolutely. So, like I said, I was a sysadmin for going on 20 years. And what, I always kind of landed on is you need to be testing everywhere all the time is what it boils down to. At least once a month, define a percentage of your infrastructure that this month we're going to test. And you're going to test a subset of that infrastructure on site. Veeam makes that very easy to do with their Sure backup capability. You can do effectively purpose-built sandbox environments on site to actually spin up and run virtual machines and test those things. You also need to test in the cloud, and this is, especially with 1111, where the replication piece comes in. Maybe a consideration is if you have those tier 1 workloads, think of that ERP system that just absolutely cannot go down because it manages your entire organization or your accounting application, things like that. If you layer replication onto the backups, 1111 systems makes it exceptionally easy through our console to do a test failover of those workloads and see what happens if you run them in the cloud, or to do a DR test to where, you just spin them up in the cloud, but there's no connection back to on-site. So you can actually make sure that those work, and that can be done in minutes, not hours. And then finally, just make sure that you can restore a file. My trick used to always be, I would have a checklist for myself every month. That every month I tested restoring a virtual machine into a sandbox. I tested restoring files from both on-prem and off-site, and had an idea of what those looked like.
I like that, and I think that is a good takeaway. Especially, we did get a question just from Tina saying, "This has all been a lot. Where do I start?" And I think, assessing and testing is a good place to start. Is there anything you'd want to add on to that? And Jim, I'm going to tack on a part B again to that question. Not just where to start, but then can you also let us know where we should start if 1111 is part of that first step, and how we would jump in with you?
Well, then that's actually what I was getting ready to say. So the thing is we are actually some of the preeminent experts when it comes to where to start and how to get started and how to design these strategies and policies that you need to define for yourself. And we have an entire managed services wing of the business that can actually help you get through this. And, the first step would be contacting our salespeople and just kind of starting that conversation. And we can help you all the way from the beginnings of the idea through actual implementation of the entire solution.
Awesome. I love that. Well, lots of comments still coming in about that, getting started. And Dan here has said, test and verify to make sure your DR is working. Otherwise, it's useless, which harkens back to where you started, Jim, with, too many people are waiting for the disaster event as their test run. So, we'll hopefully. That's always one of my favorite conversations is, you talk to admins and say, well, how are your backups? And they're like, they're great. It's like, what was the last time you tested? And they just kind of nervously laughed. That's not a way that any of us want to be in. Definitely, test those things on a regular. Yeah, nervous laughter is never the response you want when discussing ransomware preparedness. So, well, hopefully we've convinced a few people to take steps against that today, Jim. And I want to thank you so much for being here with us. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. I've had a great time. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone out there who filled out the poll. That, again, is such helpful information, and we'll make sure that you get those follow-ups from 1111. I'm also going to suggest that if you haven't already done so, head back on over to that handouts tab that we were talking about at the top of the webinar today, and you can find a fantastic white paper from 1111 Systems, the Essential Guide to Cloud-Based Backup and Disaster Recovery. It's going to walk you through how you can create a plan of action for when the absolute worst happens, and you need to keep things running, So where do you start? What's your recovery plan, your recovery objectives? This white paper is going to walk you through creating that so that, hey, we can all breathe. We can stop the nervous laughter. That's the key. Super interesting read, so download that now. Check it out. Share it around with your team after we wrap. All right, well, while you are downloading that, I'm going to go ahead and give away our very first prize of the day. It is already time for that. Now, I'll remind you, as per usual, you do need to be here live at the EcoCast with us in order to win. Our very first winner today of a $500 Amazon gift card is Larry Menkins of Missouri. Larry Menkins of Missouri, congratulations on your $500 Amazon gift card. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap the EcoCast today. Now, don't forget, there are still a few more chances to win one of those gift cards, plus that best question card from each session. So keep those questions coming in. There's so many good ones today. I love that. You guys are all clearly alive, awake, alert, and enthusiastic, and that's amazing. Well, speaking of enthusiasm, I'm really going with the smooth segues today. I'm feeling very enthusiastic about this next speaker. Most of you will already recognize that name. This is a familiar face and voice on these webinars. If you do know him, you know that we are in for a treat. Up next, I am so excited to introduce you all to Leo Vela, Inside Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Leo, I know you have a ton of info to cover. I can't wait to dive in. So the platform is all yours. Take it away.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. This is Leo Vela speaking, Mid-Market Solutions Engineer from Rubrik. Today, I wanted to talk to you about ransomware. More specifically, how can you secure your data from ransomware so when inevitably you are hit by an attack, you know you can recover quickly and confidently for your organization. But before I start talking about Rubrik, let's start with a little bit of context. So we all know that ransomware is a pervasive problem, and we're doing our best not to become another number. However, over 1/3 of organizations were impacted by ransomware within just the past year. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Whether or not there's a demand for payment, attackers are after your applications and data. They're threatening your ability to operate. And when your data is down, your business is down. And these numbers reported are just organizations that disclosed they got hit by ransomware. It's very likely there are many that didn't disclose their attack, so these numbers are much likely to be higher. When it comes to the wrong costs of a ransomware attack, the average cost of recovery, including the ransomware itself, can be in the millions, not to mention downtime, legal costs, etc. And that's nothing to say of the reputational harm and lost business from a ransomware attack can cause. This is why cyber risk is ultimately financial risk. So why is ransomware on the rise in the first place? With consumers and businesses operating in a more remote and distributed fashion, the attack surface has exponentially grown. Meanwhile, a ransomware economy has emerged for attackers enabled by ransomware as a service provider. And essentially, anyone can become a ransomware hacker as long as you know where to find that ransomware market. And it really can be like a business for these cyber criminals for that reason. And they'll continue to grow more sophisticated in their attacks. Ransomware isn't going away anytime soon. So now is the time to make this a priority. So how do you defend against ransomware attacks? Well, at the end of the day, backups are going to be your best and last line of defense. But these ransomware hackers know this. Because of this, they've been going after backup systems more and more often. And legacy solutions are being compromised. Without the proper security controls in place, backups are vulnerable. And that's a source of cyber risk. So why are legacy backups failing? Well, first of all, many backup providers aren't using a true zero trust approach. Therefore, a greater surface area for attack is vulnerable. You need to be authenticating at every single step. There's also limited ability to detect anomalous activity, more specifically mass encryption events. A lack of visibility into sensitive data exposure, customer data, PII, PHI. A lack of threat hunting and containment capabilities. This makes organizations more prone to reinfection and increases downtime for your organization. Lastly, recovery options are lacking, which makes recovery slow, complex, and costly, even if you manage to get lucky and find out where the last good point of recovery is. If your recovery is slow, what good is it? So, we know why ransomware attackers are affecting organizations, but why are organizations stuck paying ransoms in the first place? So, here's what we hear from organizations who have experienced a ransomware attack. Attackers penetrate defenses and lock down your data, and essentially have two fundamental options. One, you can pay the ransom. And from here, even if you meet the ransom demand, there's absolutely no guarantee that the attacker will provide a decryption key and unlock everything that's been encrypted within an acceptable time frame with all data intact. These are criminals after all, and you're really putting your organization's hands with their trust. Probably not the best option. So that leads us to option 2, attempting to recover. So if you attempt to recover, you need to be able to answer a series of questions to do it successfully. First, is my data protected? Can I recover? You need to be able to answer whether or not that backup data is compromised by ransomware. And you might decide to pay the ransom if the answer is no. If you don't have backups, what can you restore from? Can ransomware be investigated? Can you have access to your backup data and find where the data anomalies to assess what applications have been impacted? Can you find the last good backup to restore from? Can sensitive data be discovered? There's a possibility that that data was exfiltrated as a part of the attack. And if you can't discover where sensitive data resides, you may have no choice but to pay the ransom. And even if you follow through these steps, before initiating application recovery, you need to be confident that malware is not in the backup data. If it is, you might run the risk of reinfecting your environment and compounding the problem. And lastly, can you recover quickly? If you can't get back online quickly, you may have to meet the ransom demands. At the end of the day, option 2 is preferable to paying the ransom, but you have to be able to address those concerns to minimize risk. So, how do you reduce cyber risk? Well, it isn't just about technology. We should be thinking around these 4 pillars: people, process, preparedness, and precision. Thankfully, technology does help us out with preparedness and precision, and Rubrik just so happens to offer both. But beyond technology, things like support and services, even things like an insurance policy can affect risk. So let's run through these 4 pillars, starting with people. 1, not all data is the same. People need to be trained in how to discover critical data assets and classify their sensitivity. 2, from a vulnerability standpoint, how does the way your environment is set up and people's behavior impact risk? Are people using systems the right way? Are they leaving things open to attack? 3, people getting organized and having a game plan. Firefighters don't learn how to fight fires at a burning house. It's important to plan in advance of attack so you know you're prepared with your team. When that fire does strike, you can put it out. 4, before getting attacked, align on roles and responsibilities. What's IT's role? What's security's role? Who else needs to be involved? And 5, after doing all this work, test it. Test. Run exercises and simulations until your team fully understands the drill. Practicing improves your preparedness. Processes. This is just going to be echoing that test mantra. You have to reduce risk because it's not just a one-time exercise. It's continuous. You don't look at risk, then walk away. You shouldn't be satisfied just because you met compliance. You should be constantly looking at risk. Make sure your organization's philosophy is one of continuous improvement by looking at risk identification, risk assessment, mitigation, and monitoring. Preparedness. Here's why we start getting into actual technology industry best practices across a few layers of general security to care about, or backup becomes super important. But you need these features to be prepared. Is your data healthy? Is your data quality good and available at all times? User access. Who has access to this? Are you using role-based access controls, multi-factor authentication, temporary one-time passwords to control access? Data encryption. Is your data encrypted at rest and in motion, locked down so no one can access it? And application access. Are you using whitelists for IP connections, blacklists, leveraging SSL TLS for higher level authentication? Well, with Rubrik, we saw the problem of data risk by converging that data protection and security into a single platform. So even when security defenses fail, the data is still protected. We're protecting more enterprise applications now than ever, on premises, in the cloud, and SaaS applications. Right there for data protection and security, that's the point of data. And by securing backup data against attacks, Rubrik protects applications and keeps the businesses running. And this is all because we're leveraging zero trust data protection. It's at the foundation, the core. Data security clearly starts with protecting data from attacks. This includes a logical air gap to prevent unauthorized access, an immutable append-only file system that prevents unwanted modification, and of course, multi-factor authentication to ensure only the right people are allowed to enter the environment. And Rubrik is a leader in data protection for the past few years, and it's no mystery why. Part of our innovation is bringing zero trust to more workloads and more environments. In fact, we recently launched a solution that builds on our strategic partnership with Microsoft, Rubrik Cloud Vault. And from here, we're able to provide storage as a service for your archive backups. Whether it's logically air-gapped, it's going to be fully managed service, consumed and managed by Rubrik, and it's going to be a predictable cost. No need to worry about storage, read costs, API calls, egress charges. Let us worry about that, and you just have one single bill to look at. Having that account isolated data copy in a secured cloud vault, that's what separates from organization's core IT environment. That can give you peace of mind that you can have data readily available for recovery. So once again, we're at the topic of legacy backup. Organizations can't tolerate the delays that the legacy backup architecture gives you. It can be slow, and time is money. We all know this. Those systems can take snapshots at periodic intervals, and if attacked, we need to answer that series of questions that I posed earlier. And with earlier generations of backup solutions, they aren't built for today's ransomware era. It can be tough to be fast and accurate, and often ends up you paying the ransom. So finally, the fourth P, precision. Analytics and automation can be very helpful in making your ransomware response quick and accurate. Analytics can be used to identify the blast radius and also identify the last known clean snapshot so you can prevent malware from reinfecting systems. Automation and recovery can help you quickly and surgically restore the infected systems. This is all offered with Rubrik tools and features. So we're finally at the compare and contrast slide, and it's nothing new. I'm just showing here that you have to have those critical zero trust architecture features: immutability, multi-factor authentication, logical air gapping, but also focus on the automation, making sure that you can speed up the investigation after a ransomware attack. That's going to be critical. And as I've said before, technology is just one of the many components of reducing cyber risk. There are also services. Service offerings provided by specifically by Rubrik are going to be critical. The first one being the customer experience manager. They're going to be a dedicated resource for partners with you and your organization to perform 3 tasks around main areas. 1, ensuring that your security best practices are followed with health checks, and we recommend monthly cadences, and this ensures your data posture is strong. Onboarding and adoption. We will want to make sure that you get the maximum value from your investment. And 3, collaboration and strategic planning. We'll just have quarterly business reviews and roadmap discussions to make sure the right strategies are created. The next service offering is a ransomware response team. And this is essentially an overlay on top of any support contract that you would have with Rubrik. It's a dedicated SEAL team that works with any organizations on ransomware recovery. And not only does the software do its job, we have this team that works 24/7. When you invest in Rubrik, you have a whole team behind you for ransomware recovery. And lastly, I have to just show the ransomware recovery warranty. It's a first of its kind, announced last year. So if you're hit by ransomware and for whatever reason cannot recover data secured by Rubrik, we warrant up to $5 million in recovery-related expenses. Regardless whether your data is protected on premises or in the cloud, it's backed up by the industry's most robust warranty recovery. Lastly, I just want to make a quick plug. Essentially, the recognition for Rubrik has received from analysts like Gartner, Forrester, and Forbes has always been phenomenal. And we've been recognized as a leader in this space for years at this point. And we look forward to continuing to innovate in securing critical data and maximizing cyber resilience. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to learn more, please get in touch. Please visit rubric.com. Get in touch with your account executive and solutions engineer, and we'll be more than happy to go into a technical deep dive and see how Rubric can help your organization.
Oh man, thank you, Leo, so much for that presentation. Lots of great info, as always. You can see that I have put up that poll again for you all out there. This time we'd like to know what additional information you would like to get from Rubric. Again, a great way to make your life easy, simplify, just get the information that you want handed right to you, and an awesome follow-up to all the information that we're learning today. You know, I said this at the top, but there's going to be so much that we're covering, and there's just no way to retain it all. So when you click on these handouts or click on the polls, you're setting yourself up for success because you're giving yourself little reminders for later that you can look back at and kind of relive all of the cool things we learned today. So speaking of which, I'm also going to recommend that you head on over to the handouts tab, click on the Rubric white paper, Rubric Zero Trust for Microsoft Environments. You can explore the Rubric Zero Trust data management. It is both a data management and a cyber resilience platform, and it's actually bringing in kind of the NIST Zero Trust cybersecurity principles, helps you protect applications, user data, and best of all, providing reliable recovery in the event of an attack. And that's, you know, what we keep coming back to again today. So go check out that white paper. Make sure you've got that saved so you can check that out later. While you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and give away our next prize of the day. So we have another $500 Amazon gift card. Now, you do need to be here present live at the EcoCast in order to win. And who wouldn't want to be here for all this fun today? Our next winner of a $500 Amazon gift card is Mir Leapster of New Jersey. Mir Leapster of New Jersey, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap. Now, don't forget, there's still another gift card that we'll be giving away, plus those best question gift cards, the $50 Amazon gift cards. And we're looking at all those questions asked after we wrap. So keep those questions coming in. And now, even better than a prize, I have another extra special treat for you all because I get to introduce the one and only David Davis. Hi, David.
Hey, Jess. It's great to be back on the EcoCast with you. Thanks so much for this awesome event thus far. I'm excited to take over from here.
Yeah, well, take it away, David.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you to all of our presenters. Thank you to our audience thus far here on the EcoCast. Before I introduce you to our next set of presenters from Graphos, we've got a couple of special guests here for another, some more quick thoughts on ransomware.org and building a robust ransomware prevention and recovery strategy. You heard from them at the start of the event. Welcome back to Scott Becker and Keith Ward. Take it away, guys.
Well, Keith, welcome back. I just wanted to talk briefly about some of the things that you've been doing on ransomware.org. I noticed recently an article on the history of ransomware that you wrote. Wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that, and you know what else you guys have been posting on the site.
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. So I posted something that was kind of a wrap-up article on the history of ransomware on the site. And one of the reasons that history is important now, you know, a lot of people like their eyes roll when they talk about, you know, when they even think about history. History of ransomware is really important to understand because it helps you get inside the mind of these ransomware criminals. What were they thinking at the time, and how does their mindset change over time as well? How do the attacks change based on what is happening in the industry? As the good guys, as the white hats change their tactics, the bad guys change their tactics to kind of get ahead, and then the good guys try to catch up. We consider ourselves the good guys, obviously. So the history of ransomware talks about things like the first ransomware attack, which is known as the AIDS Trojan in 1989. That's so long ago that they demanded a ransom of $189 to, you know, for the key. this gives you an idea of how long ago it really was. I cannot imagine a ransom being that small these days. We also talk about, as we discussed at the beginning, the colonial pipeline. There's a lessons learned article that Alan Liska wrote that is really important in terms of that. We talk about locker ransomware and crypto ransomware, when those things started becoming prevalent and how they have changed the game. The archivist Trojan, which appeared in 2006, changed a lot of things. So understanding where we were can also give us some insight in how we're going. And that can be really useful for staying ahead. And so I would encourage everyone to look over ransomware.org, and because there's all kinds of useful information on the history and how to keep yourself safe, how to recover, and just the entire swath of ways to prevent ransomware from ruining your organization. And so on those lines, Scott, do you have anything else that could actually be considered good news on that front?
Yeah. Well, the first piece of good news is of course, ransomware.org. It's an awesome site. You do great work over there, and I check it all the time, for updates. But, in terms of, I feel like there are some signs of hope right now. I've been writing and talking about ransomware for the last 5 years, probably. And there are a few things over the last few months that make me a little bit hopeful. I mean, one is that, we've had some real momentum in arrests, and takedowns of ransomware groups or sort of body blows to them. There was arrest of the evil hackers late last year. U.S. Cyber Command has claimed that it's disrupted some groups. Conti sort of had that collapse, based on a huge internal document dump. And then, Lockbit is starting to show some signs of strain. It's almost like problems of growth that they're having. And one really interesting thing is there's a firm that does cryptocurrency tracing called Chainalysis. And they reported that there's been a huge consolidation in the cryptocurrency exchanges that handle the cash outs for the bad guys. It's like a ransomware attack is no good if the bad guys can't sort of find an ATM essentially to get their money back out. And right now there are just 5 firms handling almost 70% of those black market cash outs, according to this Chainalysis report. And that's a huge consolidation, and they credit government action and cooperation all around the world for creating that situation. So maybe maybe those could be some green shoots. I'm certainly going to be tracking those carefully.
Absolutely, and these attacks are starting to affect governments more and more too. As you know, the hackers are going after actual governments, which is hopefully going to give government even more incentive to essentially put a stranglehold on their money, on their form of payment, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, Keith, thanks again for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Scott.
All right, great presentation. Thank you so much, Scott and Keith, for that insight. It's now time for our next presenters here on the EcoCast. Today, I'm excited to welcome Miles Walker, who is a Channel Development Manager, and Sammy Cartouche, who is a Solution Specialist from Graphis. Miles and Sammy, it's great to have you on. Take it away.
Great stuff. Thanks so much for that. I think this is the first webinar I've done where I actually am not on screen, so this is going to be a little different for me. But I'm here today to talk about Graphis. I've obviously got my coworker Sammy here. We're going to be talking about email security and phishing defense, and how if you are looking for a phishing solution, ours is simple, powerful, and automated. A little bit about us. I'm the Channel Development Manager here at Graphis. Sammy is our Solution Specialist. I'm based in Canada, in Vancouver. Actually, we're both based in Vancouver. I actually started my career here in the radio industry, and everyone used to say I had a face for radio. So now I'm speaking without anyone seeing me. So I think it's kind of come full circle, so to speak. But let's dive into Graphis, who we are, what we do. So a little bit about us. I talked about us being an anti-phishing solution, and what we actually do, we simplify and automate phishing defense for everyone who uses our solution. We're a US-based company. We've been around since 2015. In the phishing space, that is quite old. Most of the phishing solutions that you maybe heard of are a couple years old, but we've been around going on our 8th year now, and we integrate with Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. Some of our awards, this is definitely the slide where I get to toot our own horn a little bit. We've taken home Cybersecurity Excellence Awards this past year in 2022 and in 2021. Best Innovation at the SMB Tech Fest, and SMB Forum, we took home Best New Solution and Most Innovative Solution last year. And we're really proud that this past year, we're a category leader in email security on the Get App site. We're simple, we're powerful, we're automated. That is obviously on our keynote slide there. And we can get set up in minutes. And that's a big thing. When you're bringing on a new solution, you want to make sure it's easy to integrate with your systems without changing any MX records, rerouting email traffic, or installing agents on devices. That's big. We're self-learning. Everyone's talking about AI these days with ChatGPT and everything else, down to our Netflix telling us, what we want to watch based on the AI solution. So we use AI, and we block 99% of sophisticated email attacks before they ever actually reach the employee's inbox, which is a big thing. And of course, we're automated. No manual rules needed. Our threat analysis wizard automatically removes reported emails from all impacted inboxes and returns them to the inboxes if an email is found to be non-malicious. That's a big one. So you can actually go in later and go, oh, you know what? This actually isn't a malicious email. Moving right along. So here's some of the companies we work with. We're really proud of that. Obviously, we work across companies all over the spectrum. Doesn't matter if we're in the US or Canada or Europe. We probably have worked with one of your partners. And we've, like I said, been around since 2015. So we've been doing this, and we're really proud of that. Next up, so what's the relationship between ransomware and phishing? That's a big one. This is a question that I often get asked when I'm talking. I do a lot of talks around the US and Canada at different business events and business tech events. And everyone says, well, Miles, what's the relationship between ransomware and phishing? Because we want to know more. And this is a pretty interesting stat, great one to take a photo of. 80% of all ransomware attacks involve a phishing email. That's big. And there's often a human element towards these phishing emails as well. So the ransomware email gets sent through, and some person or a human actually has to click on that email. And 80% of ransomware attacks involve a phishing email. That is unbelievable. This past year, phishing attacks were once again the #1 vector used by cyber criminals. It's not a great title, but that's for the 3rd straight year. So cyber criminals are using these phishing emails to do business email compromise, to do spear phishing attacks, and obviously to send malware or ransomware. Phishing threats are growing. This one is a real eye-opener. I talked a lot during the pandemic about how we went to a hybrid working environment, and 600% is the amount of increased phishing attacks since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what's so interesting about this is that for the first 2 weeks when the pandemic hit, so March basically 15th to the end of March, phishing attacks went down to almost an all-time low. And when I say an all-time low, that is because these cyber criminals were actually figuring out their hybrid working environment, their at-home work environment, and that's why they weren't making attacks. And this is something that's so baffling to me because right after they figured out their hybrid working environment, phishing attacks went through the roof. So the cyber criminals work like a lot of us do, obviously from being in the office to at home to a hybrid environment, and this is something that's here to stay. What we're hearing from businesses we work with in the IT space, a lot of companies are going to a hybrid environment where, their workers will come in 2 to 3 days a week. Maybe it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Monday, Friday, and they're at home. So that is something that's here. It's here to stay. And I've also read some articles this past week on the 4-day work week becoming something that is going to be introduced in North America. I cannot believe we've got to this stage in our world, but that's what's happening. 90%, an estimated 90% of data breaches that begin with a phishing email. So that is crazy that data breaches are coming from phishing emails. You saw that in the last slide. Once again, C-suite is one of the areas that are attacked a lot for spear phishing attacks. So when I say spear phishing attacks, these are pointed attacks. They often have information on the person in the C-suite, whether it's the CFO, the CTO, or CEO. And 78% of these attacks are going to spear phishing mode. So for example, a spear phishing attack that often happens, they'll find out the CTO went to Boston College University. They'll reach out and say they're part of the Boston College alumni association, and would you be willing to, invest or give some money? This is an example of a type of a spear phishing attack because they have some information, they use that, and so it's much more targeted approach. This past year, the average cost of a successful business email compromise or a BEC attack for a large organization hit over $4 million. This has continued to rise. I think at the start of the pandemic, it was about $1 million or $2 million, and now it's over $4 million. So this is for a large-scale organization. That's from the IBM Cost of Data Breach report. Pretty scary to look at these numbers. Let's keep going. All right, so the big players are getting attacked. We've talked about that already. So when I say the big players are getting attacked, we probably all know about the Colonial Pipeline attack that happened just about 1.5 years ago now. Costa Rica recently had an attack, and they declared a state of emergency after a ransomware attack. If anyone out in the crowd has been to Australia, you've probably heard of Optus. They're one of the big players in TV and telecommunication, and 10 million customers were attacked. I cannot believe this. With a country of about 27 million people, that's almost 1/3 of the Australians had a hack exposing their personal details. Toyota suspends domestic factory operations after a suspected cyber attack. So these are large-scale attacks. So these are companies that are big, often with thousands of employees, and these attacks continue to happen. Manufacturing, we're looking at 2/3 of all manufacturing companies have had some type of ransomware attack in the last 24 months. I like to talk about large-scale companies, but I also like to talk about small-scale companies because a lot of SMBs are getting attacked as well. This was the first year that small and medium-sized businesses made up more than 50% of the attacks we've seen in the world. So this year, I think there's about 51% of attacks we've seen on a global scale are against small and medium-sized businesses. I'm not sure if you would know any of these businesses that I've listed here. Maybe if you're a skier or a snowboarder, you've heard of Whistler and Blackcomb, or maybe if you're in the Texas area, you've heard of Jason's Deli. But these are small-scale businesses. Emerald Queen is a casino down the street from me, just outside of Seattle, that recently had a ransomware attack. So these are examples of the attacks that are happening, and they're becoming more and more prevalent. And when I say more and more prevalent, these companies probably weren't targeted, even 3 or 4 years ago. Wentworth Golf Club is, if there's any golfers out there, you maybe heard of Wentworth. It's one of the most prestigious golf clubs just outside of London in England. And this attack that happened, they actually went after information. So they didn't put a ransomware attack onto Wentworth Golf Club. They actually went after credentials. And when I say credentials, they know that the millionaires and the billionaires of the London area and the UK all play here. So they're going to probably be selling those credentials on the dark web sometime soon. Collingwood School, that's a local school in my area. They were actually hit with a ransomware attack for $16,000. And so what's happening these days, these small and medium-sized businesses realize that, yes, Colonial Pipeline might pay out $11 or $12 or $13 million for a ransomware attack, but they know they can go after the low-hanging fruit. So a school like Collingwood, a $16,000 attack won't cripple their business, but it will obviously hurt their bottom line. So a lot of these little guys are being attacked these days. Another figure, get out your cameras, take a photo of that. Great one to share with your IT team. 71% of companies worldwide were affected by ransomware in 2022. That doesn't mean they actually paid the ransomware, but they were affected. So this is something that really, really scares a lot of people when I'm out doing my talks, that ransomware attacks are here, they're here to stay, and they're not slowing down at any point soon. So diving into the world of AI, AI is the future of email security. If your business doesn't have an AI-based phishing solution, you're probably going to have one within the next 12 to 18 months. So please start doing your research. Obviously, Graphis is a great place to start. This is the 4 things that we do at Graphis. Obviously, cost savings is a big one. And AI security gives you more protection without adding to your payroll. That's a big one. Secure automation and AI can save businesses more than 80% of the cost of manual security. So you're not going to be taking away time from your techs who are currently working probably on bigger projects. This is something that works in the background. It's cloud-based, and you don't really have to spend a lot of time on it. Improved cybersecurity posture and greater cyber resilience. That's what we're all striving for as businesses, to get better cyber resilience and to have a better cybersecurity posture. And then lastly, fewer phishing emails reaching employees. That's the goal of our solution. We block 99% of all phishing emails, and at the end of the day, we can never protect against 100% of phishing attacks. These cyber criminals, they're getting smarter, they're getting more innovative, and what they're doing, they're not just 16-year-old kids in the basement of a small Indiana town anymore. they're actually cyber criminals working in cyber farms, often in Eastern Europe or in Russia, and their whole goal is to send out phishing emails that work. So they're getting smarter. They're figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Jumping on to the actual solution itself, I mentioned this just now. What we're doing is we're improving your cyber resilience, and we're bolstering your defense against the biggest threats that are facing us today, which are phishing. AI-driven Guardian powered by patented algorithms, and we use more than 50 points of comparison to actually look at each email that comes into your system, and we actually give it a score, which I'm going to get into in a second here. Let's jump right in. So here's the 3 layers of protection. Later on, when Sami jumps on, he's actually going to be diving into the platform, and he's going to be showing you a little bit of the ins and outs. We're going to give you a brief overview of what that looks like. But here's our 3 layers of protection. Our Fish 911 alert, that obviously goes through suspicious or unwanted emails. Next up, our employee shield. That is our most visible layer of defense. And when I say visible layer of defense, you will actually be seeing this on your emails you work with on a daily basis, sometimes several times a day. And lastly, automatic quarantine, of course, that looks after our malicious emails. Moving right along. All right, so here's the trust graph. This is our AI-based solution going to work. So once again, I mentioned that there's 50 different attributes that are looked at on each email that comes in to your inbox. It looks at the subject, it looks at the country, it looks at the sender, it looks at that domain. And we use that patented AI technology. We have 2 patents, and they actually analyze historical and real-time communication between the different people, whether it's what devices they're using, what networks they're using. That's where the deep learning AI comes into it. And it actually figures out the credibility of each email and whether we should allow it in or whether we should block it, or whether we should put on that employee shield banner we talked about earlier. If you are looking at a phishing solution, you need to have a solution in place that is based on AI and is constantly learning. I know a lot of people say, Miles, we use a secure email gateway, and that is great that you have a secure email gateway. You obviously have to write those rules. And with a secure email gateway, a lot of these cyber criminals have figured out ways around those rules. This is called the trust graph, kind of like a credit score, where we actually give each email a score, and we say, you know what, this email is safe or this email is not safe. So this is our first line of defense right here. Next up, we have our automatic quarantine. So the AI, like I mentioned, it never stops learning, and it analyzes more than 50 different attributes. I got to kind of drum that in over and over. As soon as it detects, a malicious element or something in the email, it automatically quarantines those emails so it can't actually get through the end user. And we, like I said, we analyze structure, URLs, the attachments, and we actually see what is in that email. And if there's any compromised payload or a URL is detected, the message is automatically quarantined, and an alert is generated so that whoever's doing the graphics admin is notified, so they can actually go in and have a look, maybe in a sandbox environment. So that's something that's really important about our solution. Next up, we have the employee shield. Employee shield, like I mentioned, this is the most visual layer of defense. So you can see it there on the right-hand corner. So it says graphics, it's in purple. You can change that color depending on your organization. And this is where the solution actually has its special sauce, so to say. And when I say special sauce, this is where we take the employee and turn them into the biggest asset where they maybe would have been the biggest hindrance beforehand. So they can actually report a phishing or report a false positive. So maybe they know that email is legitimate. They report it false positive, it comes into their inbox. If they see that this email is clearly phishing, what's so powerful about this solution is that it will remove all the other emails like this that have been sent to the company. So say you're based in New York, you see clearly a phishing email, you report it phishing. When the time, the Nashville office or the Chicago office or the Sacramento office wakes up, all those emails have been pulled from their system. So they won't even see that they're actually there. So you can alert your user, you empower your user, and you can also analyze that threat. And that employee shield right there, we can see the different banner right there, and it actually tells you what type of attack that this is. All right, moving along. Reporting suspicious emails. So Fish 911, transform your users into an active shield of defense by empowering them to proactively quarantine. I kind of talked about that, and it simultaneously reports that suspicious or unwanted email for the IT team to investigate. So that is great that they can actually go in, they can look at the threat, and they can actually see what type of threat these are. Moving along, I mentioned we can get up and running within minutes, and that is really, really important. So we work with Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace, and we don't have to change MX records or install agents on devices, and there's no rule setting. That's big. So we can get up and running. Usually within less than an hour, we can be up and running in your system and protecting the business. Our automated initialization of Trust Graph, that's the self-learning AI algorithm. That begins right away. Like I said, deep learning. And that is so important moving forward, depending on what part of the business you're in, because we need to have a solution that works and evolves, because these cyber criminals are working and evolving along the way. So really, at the end of the day, the biggest thing that we're doing, we're giving peace of mind. So 60% more effective than a secure email gateway. That is super important. So if you're protecting your house, you want to make sure that you're doing the most you can to protect your business from phishing emails and other types of attacks. And we, like I mentioned earlier, we stop 99% of all phishing attacks, and we're constantly learning. So we're seeing new threats come in, and we're figuring that out. I want to look at the NIST platform here. So when I look at our products that we have under our one pane of glass, whether it's from identify to protect to detect to respond to recover, we probably have a solution that might help your business. When we're looking at the identify, we're looking at dark web ID, so we can actually look on the dark web and see if any of your emails are there and potentially compromised. Whether it's using our Kaseya VSA or our Datto RMM, we have solutions in place to identify some problems. Protecting, whether it's Graphis or Bullfish ID or Passly, we're looking at MFA, and we're trying to figure out ways to protect your house. They say with MFA, you can protect against 75% of all attacks just doing that one thing. Bullfish ID, whether that's security awareness training, that is something that all companies are doing these days. Hopefully everyone out there who's listening is doing some type of security awareness training, because this is something that is essential. They say 70% of you, actually, you know what, I'll leave that for the next slide. We'll dive into that next. Detect, whether that's using our Rocket Cyber or Managed SOC, and then lastly, BCDR and SaaS backup. Human-related causes are responsible for 95% of cybersecurity breaches. Here is where I'm going to dive in to the 70%, like I mentioned. Organizations that conduct regular security awareness training have a 70% lower likelihood of experience a successful ransomware attack. This is huge. This is a great place to start. If you do not have security awareness training in place, you have to think about this moving forward. I know a lot of small companies still don't do cybersecurity awareness training. Hopefully most of you that are listening in do. But at the end of the day, you need to take anything you can to mitigate human error, because there is a human aspect to a lot of these ransomware attacks, and you have to stop it at the source. We have plug-and-play customizable phishing kits, and we have video lessons and online quizzes, which help because they're personalized to your business, and they will help your business, sustain yourself against those attacks. Moving along. Obviously, I love to throw a couple images in here. Doing phishing simulations is no longer optional. That is something I always tell the people when I'm talking to them at IT conferences or events. This is something that maybe 3 or 4 years ago, if you were a smaller business, you didn't have to do phishing simulations. Now it is something that you have to think about moving forward, because right now, this is the single biggest way that businesses are getting attacked, through phishing. I've got one last slide. I would love to connect with you. If you grab your phone, you can put it up to the QR code here and connect with me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content. This morning alone, I posted an attack or a video of talking about how attacks are hitting Americans right now to the tune of $40 billion. So $40 billion was the amount spent on phishing attacks last year, just in the USA alone. I post content about all different things in the cybersecurity world, so I'd love to connect up with you. I don't use LinkedIn as a selling tool. I use it as a learning tool. I have Sammy who's going to jump on and show us a little bit about the platform. Sammy, can you hop on right now, and we'll dive into this platform, which is called Graphis.
I can indeed. Thank you so much for the intro, Miles. So everybody, my name is Sammy Karkush. I'm one of the solution specialists here for Graphis. So just to dive into the solution here and show you guys what it looks like to manage Graphis or be the administrator for Graphis on a day-to-day basis. One of the big things here is that, like Miles said, this is obviously something that is getting more and more serious, and people are having to put systems in place in order to be able to protect against phishing emails. The problem is that you don't want a solution that's going to end up taking up 8 hours a day just to manage. So when Graphis was built, it was built with the IT professional in mind. So it's very, very simple, as you can see. Gives you a really clean overview of what's happening at any given moment, and you can actually keep track of exactly what's happening in your email environment. So just like Miles touched on earlier, you'll be able to see anything that gets quarantined. That beautiful banner that he showed there, you can keep track of how many of those are popping up on emails. And what's really nice here is that all of these numbers are interactive. And what I mean by that is I can see here, okay, well, there's 15 emails that are phishing emails that have banners on them. I can click on that number, and that will take me to the list of those emails. Another really powerful tool here with Graphis is any email that has been actioned by the system you're going to be able to actually investigate it. And we keep it really simple to give you all the most important information right at your fingertips. So right here, I can see all the metadata of the email. I can see the SPF signature or DKIM signature. I can see where it came from. And my favorite part is I can see who opened the email. So if it turns out this is indeed a phishing email, I don't have to worry about going and looking and asking, in the company who opened it. I can actually see that really quickly here and just go deal with those people. So it gives you a lot of great tools, including the header of the email as well. If you've ever tried to pull the email header, I'm sure that you had to come up with a PowerShell script or something like that in order to get it to populate. With Graphis, we actually have it all available to you really quickly here, and it's actually even all parsed out for you, meaning that you don't have to, it's not all in one clump, really easy to analyze. And then, of course, we have the original view of the email. So just like Miles was saying earlier, Graphis does do sandboxing, detonating of links. That all happens automatically, so you don't actually have to manually do any of that. Now, what I want to highlight as well is how we manage Fish 911. And Fish 911, Miles touched on it a little bit. That is a feature that helps you manage emails that, maybe Graphis didn't put a banner on, maybe a user's not sure if it's phishing or not, and they want to escalate it to the IT team. I'm sure you guys get these emails all the time, but we want to give Graphis visibility so that it sees, what type of emails those are and what you decide to do in order for it to be able to manage those moving forward. And the way that we actually have Fish 911 set up is you can have your users either forward that email to a dedicated inbox that you put here into Graphis, or we can even integrate directly to the report phishing button within Outlook itself. So for all of you that are using Office 365, you'll be able to actually set up that integration. Makes it a lot easier for users. They don't have to go searching around or forwarding an email. Once they click that report phishing button, what ends up happening is that Graphis will pull that email out of everyone's inbox and quarantine it and actually alert you, the administrator. And we can set up those alerts in a few different ways. We can either do that by email. So if you've got somebody dedicated to this, it could go straight to their email, or you can put in your support @ or help desk @ email address to raise a ticket within your ticketing system. If you do use a PSA, we do have some direct integrations here with BMS, ConnectWise. We do also have one for Autotask coming pretty soon. So if you do use one of those, you'll be able to connect it directly here. And of course, you can choose what it's going to alert you about. So once you get that alert, you'll be able to jump into Fish 911 very quickly. And I just want to show you guys something very important here. If it turns out that a email, was a false positive, maybe the user thought it was phishing, but it wasn't, we need to put it back into everybody's inbox. Traditionally, in a lot of the older solutions, you would have to do that one by one and drag and drop basically that email into everybody's inbox. With Graphis, all you have to do is click unquarantine. That will pop it back into everybody's inbox that it initially got sent to. So it saves you a lot of time. You can jump into here into Graphis, action an email within minutes or even seconds sometimes, and move on with your day and take care of the rest of the things that you need to take care of. Now, in terms of other important features here for Graphis that I want to highlight, there's two of them here that are both around impersonation. Now, as you guys know, there's a lot of impersonation going around. Obviously, there's emails going around pretending to be the CEO for, new hires, asking them to buy gift cards or whatever, they might ask them for their phone number or something like that. We have two ways here that you can protect against it. So Graphis is already looking at impersonation in general. So if I have a partner, for example, that I'm emailing back and forth, and out of nowhere they decide to email me from a Gmail account or from a Hotmail account, and they don't usually do that, Graphis is going to have a really high chance of putting a banner letting me know that, hey, they usually send from this domain, but this one is coming from a different domain. What we're doing here with executive spoofing.
Sam, can I just hop in there for a second? I also wanted to
mention, of course.
I think with executive spoofing, a lot of the times people ask, can we run campaigns just for our executives? So I talked about Bullfish earlier being our security awareness training. And one thing that we do, and I know you probably talked about this in the past, but maybe not on this call, we have a drop of fish campaign, which basically are part of the solution, I guess you call it, where we eliminate the need for domain whitelisting. And what we do is we ensure that 100% campaign deliverability to end users. So there's a great integration between our Bullfish and our Graphis, which a lot of solutions don't have the integration between their cybersecurity awareness training and our phishing solution. That's something I just completely forgot, but I wanted to mention because it's so important and it's something new that we do.
Absolutely, yeah. That was a game changer when we came out with that feature because it does help you save a whole lot of time when you are doing those phishing simulation campaigns. But yeah, moving on to, so executive spoofing here, basically all you need to do is just put in the names of any executives that get impersonated often. And essentially what we're doing is we're just highlighting that. So within the banner, we'll be able to let the user know that, hey, this might not be the executive. And also we're just ratcheting up the sensitivity there for those individuals. On top of that as well, we have impersonation for internal senders. This is a new feature. So we have the toggle here on or off. Essentially what it's going to do is, generally speaking, most solutions, including Graphis, when we're looking at impersonation, we're mainly looking at domain, right? So like the example I gave you, somebody sends an email from a Gmail account out of nowhere. Usually they send from their work account. But for internal users, we can also monitor DKIM and SPF signatures in order to determine whether there's been an account takeover or spoofing. The reason why we do have this toggle on or off is, unfortunately, a lot of people do have DKIM and SPF misconfigured. But if you within your company or your client's company, you have all of that configured properly, you get a massive, massive improvement in protection here by turning this on. That way, if, for example, Miles, we're both internal, he emails me, and then one day in one of his emails, the signatures are misconfigured, that's probably going to lead us to think that that might be an impersonation or a phishing email. So that's a really, really big one. And a couple more things here. We're almost wrapped up. I just want to point out that the banner here is customizable. So you saw earlier in that example that Miles showed, it was a different hue of pink. This one is a little bit lighter, but you can change it to whatever color you want, and you're even able to put your company name at the top there. So this is how we have it configured internally, just to give you an example. We've got it set to yellow here, but you can play around and make it look, match your company colors, for example. Just want to make sure that it's something that pops and catches people's attention. So as you can see, Graphis is super easy to use. Again, the whole idea is to make it so that Graphis, it's very automated, runs on its own, and you're just jumping in here for a few minutes at a time to action an email. And as the AI learns and adapts to your email environment, it will become more and more automated over time, which is super, super important. And that's pretty much my end of things. Obviously, we're always happy to do demos and go a little bit more in depth into the solution. I do these demos all day long, so I'm pretty good at them now. Yeah, that's pretty much my side of things. Anything else you want to add, Miles?
No, that's great, Sammy. I would say he's pretty amazing. And you obviously get to see his face as well in a demo, which brings a nice little mix to it, of course.
There you go.
I think it's, you dove into the product, you showed them some ins and outs, and now if people are starting to look for a phishing solution, this is one, hopefully, that they'll say, wow, this looks interesting, I want to hear more.
Ooh.
Feel free to scan the QR code there. I think that's it from us, unless we have any questions.
Great presentation, really cool demo. Absolutely. We do have some questions. In fact, lots of questions coming in for you all there at Graphis. Thank you for taking time to do the demo as well. That was really cool. It's got a beautiful user interface. I'm a big fan of user interfaces, and I can tell that this product would be very easy to use and fun to use, interesting to use. So cool demo. I just brought up a poll question for everyone out there in the audience. The question says, what additional information would you like about the Graphis solution? Maybe you'd like a data sheet. You want to get your own personal demo. That way you can ask all the questions you want. Some pricing details. Maybe you'd like to try this out for yourself. We want to get your feedback there on the poll, and the team at Graphis would like to hear from you. So let's go ahead and kick off Q&A with, let's see, first one they're asking here is, what's the difference between your banner and banners I've seen on similar products?
Sammy,
that is a great question.
One?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually a great question because it's something that I'm very proud of and that I try to harp on a little bit in my presentations. One of the biggest differences is a lot of other banners don't always show up everywhere. And what I mean by that is, for example, Google does have its own banner that you can enable, Google Workspace. However, it only works if you're using your email through the web app. Graphis' banner is HTML that gets injected into the body of the message, which means it shows up regardless of the device, regardless of your email client. So your customer could be, or sorry, the end user could be looking at their email on their iPhone, on the Outlook app. Doesn't matter what they're using. The other major thing is that our banners are interactive. So like Miles said earlier, we have those buttons in order to leverage the users to help protect everybody else, and also to help Graphis learn what normal emails are, look like, and the phishing, what the phishing ones look like. A lot of other banners are not interactive. They'll be informational only. So I think those are the two main differences that you're going to see if you're looking at banners in other solutions.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that one. A couple of great comments. Jeffrey said, a good demo, and Jose said, I'm sold. I like to see that.
That is great to hear.
I promise that's not a plant. Hopefully that's maybe, it could be the person who said they're already a customer, but thanks. I'd love to get that feedback right away. That's great.
A couple of folks asked about, they said they're using Microsoft or Office 365 email in the cloud. Would this be compatible with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Graphis being itself an app that connects and being cloud-based, only would be able to connect to Office 365 in the cloud and Google Workspace in the cloud, of course.
Got it. Okay. A couple other questions here. I'll just rephrase them as, what makes Graphis different from other solutions out there that, say, provide training, security awareness training to end users? What makes Graphis different or unique from those?
Yeah, I would say that one of the big things is just the way that Graphis was built. And I don't mean like the technical specifics of it. What I mean is that Graphis was an independent company that built out a solution just to help stop phishing emails. So a lot of other solutions out there that might have been predominantly just training and security awareness training and phishing simulation, sometimes we'll build out a solution a little bit as an afterthought, right? And some of them are pretty good, but what I would say is Graphis was built with IT professionals in mind, and the whole goal of Graphis was to help stop phishing emails. And so that's why for us here, we integrate with another great phishing simulation and security awareness training solution and have them work in tandem rather than just kind of building one over the other as an afterthought.
And I think I'll jump on that one. I mean, Bullfish is our security awareness training. And I mean, we use it here at our company. The sweet spot, they say, is to do 11 campaigns a year. And people say, Miles, why not 12? Well, then people start expecting it every month. So we have to have at least one in there where they have a month off. And security awareness training, I mean, I harp on this on all my talks. This is something that's going to be part of our world going forward. Every company within the next 24 months will be doing some type of security awareness training. So if you're not doing it, start looking. Obviously, Bullfish is the one that integrates with Graphis. And it's such a seamless integration, which is a really nice part of, if you get on with Graphis, definitely look at Bullfish as well.
Excellent. Another question here about Microsoft 365. They're asking, where does Graphis sit kind of in the flow of the email?
Yeah, so Graphis is what's called a post-delivery analysis solution. And what that means is that it actually sits basically last. So it's actually via API looking in. So as an email is coming into the inbox is when Graphis analyzes it in real time and is able to make a decision on whether to let it through or quarantine it or put a banner before it even hits the inbox. So what that means is if you have Office 365, let's say, and you've got some rules for basic filtering or something like that, this is not going to interfere with that. You can, modify those rules if you want, or you can just leave them as is. Graphis is just going to analyze what Office 365 decides to let through to your inbox.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time here in our presentation slot, and time is running out here in the entire EcoCast event. In fact, I think this is a great place to wrap up. I really want to thank our experts from Graphis, Miles and sorry,
Sammy.
I forgot. Sammy.
Sammy, yeah.
Sammy did an awesome demo.
No worries.
Miles and Sammy,
thanks.
Thank you so much for being on the EcoCast today. Really great presentation, really cool product. The audience is obviously excited about this. I think this could help a lot of folks out there. Thanks for being on the event today.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you to Graphis for supporting the event. Thank you to the audience out there for responding to the poll on the screen. If you haven't done that yet, now is the time. Also, don't forget about the link there in your handouts tab. That'll take you to graphis.ai, specifically into their resources where you can download an ebook on the rise of ransomware. It looks like a really excellent resource. You want to download that, share it with your friends and colleagues. I love these statistics that are on here as well, by the way. Nice charts and graphs and stats that could be really beneficial in, helping to support the acquisition of a solution like this. So, all right. With that, it's now time for our final gift card announcement here on the EcoCast today. This is going out to Michael Rebellis from North Carolina. They've got an Amazon $500 gift card. We'll be contacting you to deliver that. And before you go, if you are a potential sponsor of an upcoming EcoCast or MegaCast event, reach out to us at Actual Tech Media. We would be glad to chat with you about that. We would love to have you on an upcoming event. And speaking of upcoming events, we've got an expert series coming up on February 24th. That is this Friday. Hey, that's tomorrow, on protecting Microsoft environments, how to defend Azure and on-premises infrastructure. You'll hear from Portworx, Rubrik, Veeam, and CyberArk, as well as our expert presenter on protecting Microsoft environments. So hope to see you on that event tomorrow. I hope that you enjoyed this EcoCast today on Defense in Depth, building a robust ransomware prevention and recovery strategy. Hope that you learned a lot, and I hope that you have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.